Now I'm just making noises into the microphone because I can. I'm
Awesome.
done. Welcome to Stargatezing, a new Stargate podcast with your hosts, Kathy and Mary.
Hello.
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 We're back.
Yes, we are.
We're making another one.
Back so soon.
I have an important question.
Yes.
How does O'Neill spell his name?
Which O'Neill are we talking about?
Ah, you see, you know where I'm going.
Yes.
Well, last time we had mentioned that he spells his name with 2 L's, but I actually had completely forgotten that the one in the movie only spells it with 1.
Yeah, I think it gets mentioned at some point, which I don't know. That's not really a spoiler, I hope, but I think it gets mentioned in the show, not like, yeah, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I noticed this because I was bored in a meeting, so I decided, because I was thinking about this instead of thinking about the stuff they were talking about in the meeting, I was like, I'm going to make a list of the actors who were in both shows, or at least the characters that were in both shows, because I could remember a few of them, but then I thought there might be more than just the 3 or 4 we mentioned last time. So that's what I did. So obviously we have O'Neill in both, except that in the movie it's 1 L, and in the series it's 2 L's. And then, of course, you know who those are played by, Kathy.
Yes. So the movie O'Neill is Kurt Russell.
Yes.
And the TV O'Neill 2 L's is Richard Dean Anderson.
Indeed. Yay, MacGyver.
MacGyver fame.
Daniel Jackson.
Yes.
Movie
Daniel Jackson is James Spader.
And then the series, do you remember him?
Oh my god, yes I do. Michael Shanks.
Yes. Kowalski was in both, actually. He was a lieutenant in the movie, and he's a major in the show. Aww. I forgot he actually has a pretty big role. I don't remember how many episodes. He's in a bunch of episodes in the show, and I had forgotten that he's in both. I actually am not really familiar with either one. John Deal is in the movie, and then Jay, I hope I'm not saying his last name wrong. It's either Acavone or Acavone, Acavone.
Okay.
Ferretti, French Stewart,
yes.
So Harry,
yep.
is in both.
But
he is not played by French Stewart.
Incoming message from the big giant head.
That would be great if he did, if he was. I wish he was, but it's
I would like to see Ferretti played by French Stewart as Harry from Third Rock.
Yes, so would I. That would be fabulous. It would just make the show so much better. Someone named Brent State. He's actually only in 2 episodes, which reminds me, I don't know if we're counting the first 2 episodes as 1 episode or 2 episodes, because that depends on who you're talking to, but I guess we'll get there in a minute when we get into the actual show. Catherine is in both. Vivica Landfor's in the movie, and in the series, Viater Hirschon. Skara is Alexis Cruz in both. Showery is actually, they spelled her name different in the movie from how it's spelled in the series, which I hadn't realized. I thought it was just Michael Shanks and everybody pronouncing it differently, but it's SHA''URE, Millie Avital in the movie, and SHA''RE, Viater Hirschon in the series.
Showery versus Share.
Yes, there's a rumor that Richard Dean Anderson couldn't pronounce showery right, but probably it was because of legal reasons that they made these little minor changes like that.
It does seem unlikely, but
yes, it's not that hard to say. The village leader, who apparently his name is Kasuf, which I didn't know last time, and he's also called Good Father a few times by Jackson. Eric Avari played him in both. Sarah O'Neill, spelled with an H in the movie, but not in the series, spelled without the H in the series. Cecil Hoffman in the movie, and Harley Jane Kozak in the series. And then the last 2, Richard Kind. Gary Myers was not in both. Richard Kind wasn't in both, but there's a character named Myers in both, although I don't know if it's the exact same character because it's credited as Gary Myers in the movie, but only just Myers in the series. And then there's some random person named Jenny that is in both. The character's name is Jenny, and in the movie it's Lee Taylor Allen and then Amber Rothwell, but those last two are only in one episode each. And that's my fun story.
Well, I appreciate your fun story. There's some crossover of characters, but almost no crossover of actors, so
right. Yeah, just those two randomly. Just Alexis Cruz and Eric Amari. So what are we watching today? What are we talking about today?
Today we are talking about SG1's first episode, Children of the Gods. And depending on where you watched it, you could have a Children of the Gods Part 1 as Episode 1 and Part 2 is Episode 2. Or it could all be one thing if you watched it on DVD. Is that right?
Yeah, I did watch the DVD version, so for me it was one long episode.
And I watched it on the Hulu.
And apparently my version gets the full frontal nudity that I guess your version didn't. Is that right?
Yes, that's right. There's no full frontal nudity in the Hulu version of the show. I don't think I've ever seen it with the full frontal nudity version, so...
I'm wondering how many other differences there might be between the two. So I guess we'll figure that out as we go along if one of us is talking about stuff and the other one has no idea what is going on because that scene wasn't in their version.
Or it's just me and I don't know what's going on.
Or it's that.
So we open the show on a group of military people sitting at a card table playing poker, I'm guessing. I don't know cards, but it looked like poker.
Yeah, some card game, yeah.
And they're all pretty unconcerned except for the woman who's sitting there. She must be new because she's like, is anyone worried we're going to get caught doing this? And then they're like, nobody ever comes down here. This thing is a money drain that's not going to last very long. Is basically the gist of what I got from them. There's a big thing under a tarp, and the tarp starts to flutter, which she notices, and again, she's dismissed by her fellow military people / card players. But then it gets really crazy and it moves a lot and the ramp starts to shake, and so that's noticeable. And the tarp flies off of this big ring. Ah!
Dun, dun, dun. We couldn't have, who could have known that it was a ring under there, this big round thing in the corner with the tarp over it. I never would have guessed.
Everyone looks really scared. One guy rushes off to go try to make an emergency phone call, but he just drops the phone because they're all scared because what we know is the Stargate turns on, opens up, whooshes, and then there's a big puddly looking thing there. The guys are just kind of standing there with their guns out, and the woman is very curious, so she makes her way up to the puddly thing. I'm just gonna call it a wormhole. Can I just call it a wormhole?
Go ahead. That's one scene from now where they start calling it that.
She makes her way up to the wormhole. And she is very curious and she has a bit of wonder about it, but unfortunately then someone in a giant snake helmet comes through and grabs her. Uh-oh. And then a whole group of them follows, including one guy wearing a gold snake helmet, and he issues orders in a language we don't know.
In a weird echoey voice. I feel like their voice is kind of important for
true.
For the gold guy, I guess. Although I guess we don't really know that yet.
That's not how it is.
That's just
I'm good at sound effects.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they open fire, and there's gunfire and laser fire exchanged between the snake soldiers and the other soldiers. But they're able to finally call for help. But as the help is coming, the reinforcements are coming, but they are too late. The snake people make their way back through the Stargate with the female soldier.
One extra note that I have here actually is just about their costumes, which we had talked about how much we liked the costume department work that was done in the last episode. The gold guy I felt was kind of ridiculous looking, personally. I liked his gold lipstick. I thought that was kind of cool, and I kind of wanted that. But what was weird to me is that because they have those giant headdresses on, the giant snake headdresses on.
Yeah.
but they didn't retract all the way. So he was just kind of, when he opened the faceplate, he was just kind of wearing this giant helmet around his head.
Make way for Dark Helmet.
All rise in the presence of Dark Helmet.
And to me, he came across as looking kind of like a kid wearing an oversized helmet and like dressed up as an adult for Halloween. Basically, is just the impression that I got from it. He just was not at all intimidating as I felt like he was supposed to be, and just looked kind of ridiculous. But then the other guy that was standing with him that took the woman, the female soldier captive, which I wouldn't bother mentioning her gender, but that does become important later. That character, when he opened his helmet, we see that he's got like this big gold brand in the middle of his forehead. And the gold guy says something to him in that foreign language, and we hear him say the word Teal'c, which probably wouldn't really mean anything to you unless you've seen this like a million times, but that actually, Teal'c is that character's name, and he becomes pretty important later on.
I didn't even hear him say that.
Oh, really?
I mean,
you might not, that might not have been in your version, because, that could be an extra scene that mine had that yours didn't.
It could also just be the way my brain processes information that I didn't hear Teal'c in there at all.
That's also possible.
We'll never know.
The next thing that we do is go into an intro song and credits panning over a pharaoh face, just like in the movie.
Not as long as the movie one, but...
Not as long as the movie one, no, that is true. The movie one was so long that, as I said, I skipped over it. We then end up at O'Neill's house, 2 L's. And we have a couple of military guys coming up to the house in a military-looking car. They park in the driveway, knock on the door, and then from there we pan up to see that O'Neill is looking at a telescope. One of the guys gets out of the car and goes up to the roof. How he knew O'Neill was on the roof, I'm not really sure, but he made his way up to the roof and asks if that's O'Neill. O'Neill says yes, but that he's retired. And he asks if they're there from the Air Force, which the guy says, yes, they are. And O'Neill tells him, well, you should join NASA because that's where all the action's going to be. Long story short here, O'Neill has to go see Hammond, who replaced General West, who is the guy in the movie that sounded just like Hammond.
General West.
So you think you've solved in 14 days what they couldn't solve in 2 years?
General Hammond, time to start getting my thoughts together.
So I guess that kind of deep voice with the southern accent is a prerequisite for that job.
It could be.
And we learned that the reason that he's being asked to come in is because of the Stargate.
Then we next jump to they're inside the complex again with where the Stargate is, but they lead O'Neill down an elevator and then another elevator to get down to the floor. They're very far deep underground. O'Neill's like, I've been here before, I know this, guys. And they lead him to General Hammond.
Then they had a discussion about what to do on their retirement because Hammond was about to retire and wanted to write a book.
You ever think of writing a book about your exploits in the line of duty?
I've thought about it, but then I'd have to shoot anyone that actually read it.
And we've introduced to jokey, snarky O'Neill.
Indeed. Yeah. Snarky O'Neill and his dry wit. Wry wit, even.
Yes.
Next thing that happens is they take O'Neill down to see the dead guards that are in, I guess, that they have a morgue. We see that these people are not human because they have slits in their stomach, which I majored in biology and I have a master's degree in biology and I've done tons of necropsies, so really this shouldn't gross me out as much as it does, but I hate the slits in these people's stomach because it's just gross. It's just gross looking. Trypophobia is that thing where you don't like holes, where you can't stand looking at holes and they gross you out, and for some reason that triggers my trypophobia.
Interesting.
Yeah, fascinating. I know.
It's just gross and slimy in there, so...
Also that, yeah, they're not slimy here in this
No,
scene, but we'll get to that for sure. Hammond tells O'Neill all about the firefight that happened and mentions that they had these advanced weapons that we can't figure out how they operate. So he hands one to O'Neill, who then just cocks it like it's no big deal. They show his finger just pushing a button. So if all that is required to make the weapons operate is pushing a button, why couldn't the military people outside of O'Neill figure out how to make this weapon work? I don't know that they ever mentioned the name of the planet in the movie, but they talk about it
Abydos,
with the name Abydos here. And O'Neill specifies that the people on Abydos were in fact all human, even though these people that have come through and that ended up dying were clearly not in fact human. Hammond asks if O'Neill is sure that all of the people are dead, and O'Neill says that there's no way that they could have survived that nuclear blast. And here they discuss how glowy Ra's eyes were, and that this new gold guy also had those same glowy eyes. Back into the hallway, they're walking back to Hammond's office, and O'Neill sees some familiar faces, which we learn are Kowalski and Ferretti, although again, it's not the same actors, so to me, it never even registered that these were supposed to be characters from the movie when I've watched this show before. Hammond asks about Jackson, and O'Neill first wants to know why his men from that mission are being questioned. But Hammond is really insistent on learning more about what happened to Daniel Jackson, and O'Neill says that it's all in the report. It continues to feature prominently that Jackson had allergies, because when they're talking about him, O'Neill specifically says he's a scientist, he sneezed a lot. Basically, he was a geek.
Yeah.
But he did say that after Hammond accused him of not liking Daniel Jackson, O'Neill said, well, he did grow on us after saving everybody's lives and getting us back home.
That would do it for me, I think.
Yeah, I think that that's a pretty good reason to like somebody, or at least not hate them.
I'm trying to think people I dislike most. If they saved me, I'd probably be okay with them at least existing somewhere. That'd be fine.
To say the least.
Yes.
From there, they go into a quick recap of the movie, but according to O'Neill's report, we learn that the bomb supposedly blew up the gate on the other side, as well as all of the people from Abydos and Daniel Jackson.
Yes.
They did not report what actually happened. He did not report what actually happened in his report.
Yes. Hammond basically leads O'Neill down to view the Stargate, where they are preparing another bomb to go through, to O'Neill's surprise and dismay.
Not just another bomb, but a bigger bomb. This one's a Mark V. The other one is apparently only a Mark III.
Yeah, so they're sending a bigger, better bomb back through because they don't think Ra is dead, and they need to take care of that. And O'Neill is like, well, actually, I need to make an adjustment to my report that I made, because it turns out that Daniel Jackson is not in fact dead. The people in Abydos are very much alive. However, he is still sure Ra is dead, because he put a bomb up in his pyramid. I almost called it a plane. Pyramid ship.
Yeah, the one detail that O'Neill had left out is that the bomb, when it exploded, was up on a spaceship and not there by the gate.
Because the people of Abydos are cool. We had no issue with them, so there was no reason to blow them up. Also, Ra had already taken off, and he was a threat. So Hammond still thinks he's going to send the bomb through at this point, or at least is heavily considering it for the protection of Earth. And O'Neill is like, no, please don't. I don't know what he says exactly, but Hammond ends up putting O'Neill in timeout while he thinks about it.
So moving forward to timeout then, we have Kowalski there also in timeout for some reason, but not Ferretti.
Yeah, I didn't even get the impression that Kowalski was in timeout. I thought he was just visiting. I don't know.
Oh, he was just there. Maybe, I don't know.
It was a very relaxed timeout, and
it
was. Come and go. It's fine.
Yeah. Well, Kowalski salutes O'Neill, and O'Neill says for like the third or fourth time that he's retired.
Tired. I'm retired, Kowalski.
Kowalski promises that during the questioning he didn't say anything. He didn't tell them anything about what really happened, even though O'Neill had already told them at this point, so it was a moot point. Anyway, you would think that would come back to Kowalski and Ferretti too, because apparently now they've also lied for O'Neill, but I guess
wondering
they're not going to be
why they weren't
chastised for that. I don't know.
Yeah.
They reminisce about Skara, and O'Neill says that Skara reminded him of his own kid And Kowalski's like, wow, I didn't even know you had a kid after that whole mission. I never knew. And O'Neill awkwardly mentions that his son unfortunately died. Hammond comes in and asks O'Neill for an estimate of about how many people they saw on the planet. And O'Neill thinks that it's probably somewhere around 5,000. So with a number that large, Hammond doesn't want to destroy them, thankfully. And O'Neill asks if he would be allowed to send a team through, which Hammond says is too dangerous. But O'Neill convinces him to try to let him send a message through to Daniel to at least see if Daniel Jackson's still alive. And of course, that message is in the form of a box of tissues because Daniel Jackson's allergies continue to be an important theme. And somehow, if a box of tissues came through the Stargate, Daniel would know for sure that it was from O'Neill and not from anybody else that was on that mission.
It's their little private joke that he had allergies, so...
Right. Yeah. And if Jackson is still around, he'll know what it means, says O'Neill. Well, how would he know what that means? Like, this box of tissues. Oh no, Earth is under attack.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the gist is that what they're really hoping is Daniel will know it's from them and that the next people who come through will be okay.
Yeah, so presumably that would mean that he at least knows that they want to talk to him and that they're trying to communicate with him. So I'm guessing that's what they meant when they said that Jackson would know what it means. Military guys are skeptical of waiting around for a reply, but of course it might take a little while because they have no idea if there's anybody just waiting on the side, on the other side, if they're just there, or if it might take days for them to notice the box, or what might happen. So we have a very exciting scene of people just waiting around for the gate and waiting some more. Finally, the gate is triggered and we end up with an incoming wormhole. And an empty box of tissues is tossed through with a written message saying, thanks, send more.
I have a question about this box of tissues.
Yes.
It was empty when it came back through. It was pretty full when it went. Did Daniel
Yes.
waste all those tissues, or did he have that stuffy a nose that he blew through all of those? Or did he literally wait until he was finished using all the tissues to send a message back?
These are all valid questions. I don't know, his allergies are pretty bad, so maybe he really did go through all of them in like a day. Maybe he was glad to have a break from using that nasty handkerchief. And he's like, yes, something that I can just dispose of. And so he went through them all in like a day and then was like, oh no, I need more.
This was very important.
Question. It was an important question. At this point, O'Neill asks for permission to take a team through again, and this time Hammond agrees, pending presidential approval.
Very important.
O'Neill is officially recalled to active duty, and they set a meeting for the next day to prepare for their mission.
And the next thing we know, it is the next day. They're all dressed in uniform now at a conference table. I think it's Hammond, O'Neill, Kowalski, and Ferretti, and the other people who were kind of involved in the discussions. I can't remember people's names.
Yeah, I didn't make an exact...
Anyway.
I don't know all the names either, and I didn't make an exact list.
But they do Hammond does make note that they are waiting on someone else. They are waiting on Sam Carter to join them. And then Carter walks in, and oh my god, it's a girl!
What? She's even got a skirt on.
She's wearing a skirt. She's wearing a military Air Force uniform.
This is scandalous.
But she's a girl, even with her short hair.
And she goes by Sam.
I know. What's that about?
I don't know.
Trying to hide things, but don't worry. She tells Kowalski she plays with dolls when she was little.
Definitely a prerequisite.
Yeah, this was a very awkward scene. Like,
it really was.
Like, I can't even imagine at the time it was on it not being super awkward. But I feel like it's extra awkward now.
Yeah, it really is. I very much agree. It's just a bunch of sexist grossness.
Yeah, and the guys are kind of show-offy, but they, honestly, Carter's the best, and...
She is. She doesn't back down, which I think is awesome. So, I mean, that's the point of the scene, I'm sure.
She's super smart and doesn't take any of the crap the men are throwing at her.
No, absolutely
and
not.
Then, like... Including when O'Neill addresses her as doctor, and she's like, actually, I think the appropriate thing to do is address me by my rank, captain.
You should call me captain, not doctor.
It's so great.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty great, too. And I think worth mentioning, and probably nobody else cares, but I was interested that her official role as a scientist is as a theoretical astrophysicist. Yeah. Which is complicated and means she's really smart.
Yeah. But she still says, even though she's smart, she still says things like, just because my reproductive organs are on the inside instead of the outside, blah, blah, blah.
Yes, this is true. But we also do learn that she actually like does have some pretty badass credentials too, though, because she says she logged 100 hours in enemy airspace during the Gulf War. So she's not like she hasn't just been sitting in a lab or in a classroom this whole time. She actually does have combat experience.
O'Neill tells her he likes women. He just doesn't like scientists.
Yeah, and how he said that was so creepy too.
I like women.
That whole scene is just
not workplace appropriate. No. Not the tone that he used when he said it. She said that she had actually been working on the Stargate for 2 years before the Stargate mission of the movie happened, and she was actually understandably pretty bitter about the fact that she was left out of that mission.
She should be.
She should be. To go and see what's on the other side.
So they have a discussion about what to do. Like Hammond's in favor of actually burying the Stargate, but it's Carter, I believe, points out that it's known they're a threat now, and that they also have spaceships, which I think O'Neill says, like, it's not like burying the Stargate's gonna solve their problems. Maybe that was all O'Neill. I can't remember.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the basic gist, is that it would just take them longer to get there if they had to take their spaceships, but they could get there either way.
It doesn't matter anyway. Hammond was just like, I need to express my opinion, but it's already been overridden. The president's on your side, and we're gonna go through the Stargate. We're not gonna bury it.
They are given 24 hours, apparently, and they're told that if they miss that window, then there's going to be a bomb sent through for real this time, no matter what, if they miss that window.
I love bombs here.
They do love their bombs.
And then I think the next scene is them going back through the gate. Going through the gate for the first time, some of them. Again, the military guys just kind of go through, and the scientist, again, kind of, she's a military person too, but, you know, she's got a little bit of awe, and she's, you know, feeling the wormhole portal. Yeah.
Again, O'Neill continues to be a tool, and as she's trying to really appreciate the moment and how cool it is, he just shoves her through.
Lovely.
And then we're on Abydos. Yes. This time, it's not dark, which makes no sense unless they move the gate. It's not completely dark in the room. I noted so that they didn't need to light up their flares again.
Flares this time.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see because I was kind of looking to see if there was somewhere light was coming from, because, I mean, there, as we'll find out in a second, there are people in there. And it didn't look like there were, like, torches up or anything.
No, when they
flickering and...
When they show an outside view, like, there's definitely no windows in the space. There's like the big entrance, which doesn't have a door on it, but it's also at the end of a long hallway, so there really shouldn't have been any light coming into this chamber from anywhere.
But there is.
Mm-hmm. And waiting for them are all the locals with guns at the ready. How many guns did they leave behind? Like, all of them are armed. Why did they leave so many guns behind?
That is a good question. Why would they? Like,
I don't know. Yeah, so that made no sense to me. So they're all armed. We see Skara and Daniel. Skara, of course, salutes and then hugs O'Neill. My notes say hugs O'Neill.
It's close. But I mean, kind of, hugs. You know. O'Neill entirely ignores Daniel because Skara is all about hogging him. I don't know.
Yes, absolutely. But they're all speaking English now, and I wanted to know... I was wondering, because Jackson thought he was never going to see any of them again. So why did he bother to teach all of them English? And Jackson also fluently spoke their language at the end of the last movie. But throughout this entire episode, he only ever speaks to them in English, and they speak back to him in English. Which makes no sense, because why would he be trying to basically Americanize them? It makes no sense.
I was wondering that too, but the whole episode is super weird about language. So
it is,
because you have people flipping back and forth between their native tongue and English, but at times it seems like them speaking English wouldn't make sense. Like, why would they know this is later, but why would people know the language? And then And you can't even go, oh, maybe it's a universal translator type situation with Star Trek, or we'll just ignore it altogether because everyone's just going to speak English, because they flip around so much it makes no sense.
It really doesn't.
But I generally ignore it, except for when I'm thinking about it.
Meanwhile, while everybody is kind of getting reacquainted, Sam is totally nerding out over what will eventually be known as the DHD, the dial home device, and mentions that this was missing on the Earthgate, which is why the Earthgate had to be hooked up to like all these computers in order to get it to work. But apparently this ring just has this kind of like a little podium that has the different constellations on it so that they can dial home.
Touch-tone phone.
Yeah, yes, exactly, like a touch-tone phone. To dial
she
home.
Also says they had to MacGyver a system on Earth.
Oh, I missed that. That's hilarious. I completely missed that line somehow. O'Neill tells Jackson about the attack, and Jackson says that it couldn't have been from there because they've been taking 6-hour shifts to guard the gate 24 hours a day. So we have another dinner party, like the last time that a bunch of people came from Earth.
Yeah, it was pretty short, I feel like. It was, I don't know, they have a little bit of a discussion about what's going on, and Daniel mentions something about there being other Stargates, and everyone's like, what? What do you mean, Daniel?
Impossible.
And he's like, well, hold on, I'll show you what I mean.
From here, he takes them to some sort of a shrine dedicated to Ra. Daniel said that he'd discovered it after he'd been doing some exploring when the others had left, and this place is covered in hieroglyphics. They ask if Daniel had been able to translate it, and he says kind of yes and no. It doesn't actually say anything. He believes that it's actually a chart or a map, as he emphasizes. It contains a bunch of groupings of 7 symbols and lines between them, so he believes that this is actually a vast network of Stargates that go all over the universe. So she said that before they even got the Stargate to work, as they did in the movie, they had tried all different kinds of permutations, but that it didn't work. Nothing worked except for that one signal that took them to Abydos. And so Jackson and Sam have a little bit of discussion here about why that might be. So they start nerding out, bonding over the fact that they're both science nerds. And they figure that there must have been at least some universal expansion over the course of 50,000 years, which why we're talking 50,000 years instead of 10,000 years, I don't really know, but whatever.
Maybe Daniel radiocarbon dated everything in there while
yes, maybe. Maybe he radiocarbon dated the quartz type stone that they're saying all these things are made out of now instead of metal. So they figure that the gate to Abydos must have worked because it was the closest to Earth, so it would have been less impacted by the universal expansion that's happening. Sam says that she can create an algorithm that would compensate for that expansion, and that would then make all of the other gate addresses suddenly start working again.
Oh my god, that would be amazing.
So exciting.
Back at the gate, it starts to dial. The folks who were in there guarding / having a feast take cover, and we see the gate open, and the same guys with their snaky helmets come through and immediately open fire on the people who are there, which was so rude. I mean,
so rude.
Why would you do that?
Yeah, that's not really clear why they would just start shooting them all instead of taking some of them captive. But
yeah, so then a gunfight ensues, and I don't know, whatever the weapons are that they're holding, laser things. They're not really guns.
I've just been calling them staff weapons. But yeah, we don't really have a name for them at this point.
They're weapons, and they're fighting, and people die. After the guards kick everybody's ass, basically with their staff weapons, they grab Sharai and Skara
with the sparkle bling. The sparkle bling is back.
Sparkle bling.
Yeah, the gold god guy has the sparkle bling on his hand, similar to what Ra had in the movie. But instead of electrocuting them, he just kind of stuns them instead. Yes,
the same guard who we see in the first scene too also questions Skara about where he got his weapons, and then. The gold snake man. I don't know.
I just have him called Gold Guy in my notes.
I actually just wrote Gold is happy. he's happy with the kidnapping of Skara and Sheree, and says to her, "You may be the one." Or, I can't make my voice that deep. That sounds very Cookie Monster. Yeah. I mean, demonic Cookie Monster, but you may be the one.
You may be the one. Cookie.
C is for cookie. That's good enough for me.
I have to be careful when I say that word. The dog's so excited.
Oh, yeah.
Except not when I say it in a demon voice, though. They're looking at me like, what is going on?
I'm mad I can't make my voice low enough to do that justice. You may be the one.
Cookie.
You may be the one. Okay, I'm gonna stop now. So Goldie punches in symbols on the DHD while an injured Ferretti kind of looks on, and they go back through the gate. I don't know why it exploded, but I just made it explode.
It didn't actually explode, in case anyone's wondering, like, why did it explode? It didn't.
Just like to make sound effects, I don't know. Even if they don't make any sense at the time.
I appreciate your random sound effects, though, that you use to narrate life. It's great. Back on Earth, they come through the gate and close the iris. So we learned that an iris has been installed that's made of pure titanium. It kind of looks like the iris on a camera, but like with way more panels, and it's spiky and intimidating looking.
Yeah.
They update Hammond on everything that happened and about the kidnapping of Sheree and Skara. And Daniel insists that he has to be on the team that goes after Sheree and Skara. And, of course, Hammond is pretty pissed off, first of all, that he was lied to about what happened, or that the mission log was lied about.
Yeah, he's super grumpy.
So Hammond was already pretty pissed that O'Neill had falsified his record in his report, so needless to say, he's not really too happy to be seeing Daniel Jackson either, so he says that Jackson really is in no place to be making demands.
And that is the unceremonious end to part 1 from Hulu.
Oh, okay, good to know. While Kathy was busy getting intro credits for her episode 2, we had a couple extra scenes that were happening in my continued cut version. Back at the military base, Freddy was hurt in the firefight earlier, but we learned that he's going to be okay. He is laying in a hospital bed unconscious, and Kowalski's going to stay with him. Meanwhile, Daniel Jackson is in the hallway, kind of just looking like he doesn't really know what to do with himself, and so O'Neill decides to take him home.
Huh.
Back at O'Neill's place, Jackson has allergies, because of course. Daniel tells O'Neill a little bit about his time after the mission, how the people of Abydos kind of viewed him as a hero, and how much he really was truly in love with Sheree, and they were so happy together, despite the creepiness of how they got together, with her essentially just being gifted to him. O'Neill, we learned that his wife had actually left him by the time he got back from the Stargate mission. She forgave him for what happened to their son, for the fact that their son had killed himself with O'Neill's service weapon, but she was just not able to forget it, O'Neill says, and he mentions that he's actually the exact opposite. He sometimes manages to forget what happened, but he can never forgive himself. That takes us to the unknown planet.
The soldier who was kidnapped at the beginning is being dragged by the snake soldiers to the Gold Man. At some point, they've changed her clothing, so she's in some sort of, like, silky robe, I don't know, thing. But, yeah. But the Gold Man is completely out of his snakeskin armor, and he zaps her head again with his fun hand device. What were you calling it? Sparkle Bling! Sorry, yes, that's a better word for it. So he zaps her with her Sparkle Bling and talks about how she could be the vessel for his future queen. And the clothing they changed her into is immediately discarded, so he can creepily look her over. She's laid down on a table, and another woman in a different room is brought in. She's pretty costumed, I don't know, dressed up, but she's,
she looks queenly, yes, I would say.
And so she walks to the woman and makes some faces while she shows off her pouchy stomach Yeah, and
I just hate it
something
so much.
slimy is coming out.
It's even worse. It just gets worse.
Apparently that's his queen, maybe? We don't know. But the slimy thing that pops its head out
Yeah, I think so.
is like, nah, I'm good, and gets back in the pouch. So the woman's been rejected, our soldier, and Gold Snake Man just kills her. Shame.
Meanwhile, Teal'c looks unhappy
Yes.
in the background.
Okay, meanwhile, back on base, Kowalski's still hanging with Ferretti in the hospital. And then back in the meeting room, the conference room, whatever, they're all talking about who could have possibly come through the gate. And they're still, it's Ra, it's not Ra. And then Daniel's like, has his breakthrough. Gods! Plural, yeah. Daniel explains that Ra is impersonating a god that humans had already, and that there may be more of them because humans have lots of gods.
Yeah, and he mentions that the person, the creature that we knew as Ra, was supposedly part of a dying race, but there must have been at least a few others left. If it wasn't a dead race, it was a dying race. So those other beings are now posing as other gods.
Yes. Hammond basically tells them that they're going to form a unit with 9 Stargate teams to find out what they can learn and bring back anything of use that they can find. And, if possible, make peaceful contact with people of other worlds and determine if there are any threats. It's super secret. They can't tell anyone.
Super secret.
I don't know why I said that like that, but...
We also learned, Sam mentioned briefly that she was able to make a bunch of calculations and put those into the computer, and she says that it's going to spit out 2 or 3 locations or 2 or 3 destinations for them each month to go and explore.
And they have also the first team called SG1.
What? Where have we heard that before?
Will consist of Carter and O'Neill, and Jackson's like, I need to be on SG1, and Hammond's like, no, you're gonna stay here and be consultant, and Jackson's like, absolutely not. For some reason, Hammond gives in to Jackson's demands, although you don't find that out immediately.
We learned that Kowalski's going to be heading up SG2.
He looks so happy.
He's so happy. So happy. My dog is happy. He's barking. Just so happy.
Everyone should be happy for Kowalski.
Yes. Good job, Kowalski.
After this meeting, they go to see the newly conscious Ferretti, who is already, when they get there, hard at work putting in the coordinates he saw into the computer he's been given.
Why is he still intubated, though? He's conscious. He shouldn't / you can't intubate a conscious person because their gag reflex kicks in, so he should not still have an intubation tube in his mouth, but he does.
I don't know, I'm not a doctor.
I'm not either, but still. I demand more accuracy of my sci-fi, as I already mentioned before.
Actually, I did too.
More scientific accuracy for my sci-fi.
And then, again, now that they have the coordinates, they're given a go for their mission. Again, they get a hard 24-hour deadline. This time they're actually given a transmitter to send a code through when they're ready to come back so that they're allowed through.
So they don't splat on the iris.
Yes.
After they're going through the gate, we're on a new planet again. Daniel sneezes and asks for a Kleenex because, in case you guys didn't know, he has allergies. We're back at...
It's like, that's not a personality trait. Like, I don't understand.
No, it's not.
They're not always talking about, like, Carter's blonde hair or something. Like, it's
right. No.
Anyway, sorry, that's
bizarre.
not, that doesn't even have to, like, that's...
It's bizarre.
His Tinder profile would say, I sneeze. I don't know.
We go to what is essentially a harem of women where Sharae has been kept. So Sharae has been cleaned up and is also dressed up like the soldier had been before. Teal'c comes in and chooses Sharae to be the next offering. And then we go back to the gate where Daniel is trying to figure out where they are exactly and what this place is. He's thinking that it was a place of worship, and this time, for real, you guys, he can get them home.
Yeah, and then, Daniel tries to explain it, and O'Neill has no time for that shit, so...
Right.
We don't know what happens because O'Neill cut him off, so...
Right. Sam comes back up and mentions that she's put up a bunch of claymores all around them. And then we go back to the temple on the new planet. Sharae is fighting as she's brought up to be presented to the gold guy. And he sparkle blings Sharae in the face because, where else would you sparkle bling a person? They remove her dress. And this is where I learned that it was the Showtime version, because this is where the full frontal nudity happens.
Okay.
Yep. So they remove her dress, and the queen person is brought out, and the slimy monster thing comes back out, and they really make a big deal of grossing people out with the sliminess of the monster. This time, the monster is pleased, though, and crawls completely out of his former host, and crawls just all over Sharae, who's still laying there kind of being stunned.
They must have cut that out too of the Hulu one, because we basically just got her screaming off camera.
Oh, okay. They were continuing to show not full frontal nudity at this point, but they were continuing to show her boobs at this point, so that's probably why they had to cut this out. Teal'c watches. Mm-hmm. The monster continues to crawl all over Sharae and makes its way up towards her face. Go over to look at Teal'c. He's watching. Sharae is flipped over by some attendants, and the thing keeps crawling. This is a pretty long scene. The thing keeps crawling over her and makes its way to her upper back, and then the eyes glowed on the little snake thingy, which was awesome. I actually had to rewind it to see for sure, but its little eyes glowed, which was, even though it was the thing is kind of gross, I thought that its glowing eyes were actually kind of adorable. So his eyes glowed as it punched its way into Sharae's upper back. She screams. Teal'c watches.
Uncomfortably. I think he's not happy with what's happening, it looks like.
Yeah, it's weird because they just keep showing... They keep cutting over to him just looking stoic on everything. But I'm sure that the idea we're supposed to be getting is that he really doesn't like or approve of anything that's happening here.
And then we're back with SG-1. They're trekking through, trying to figure out where they're going. Daniel and Carter are having a conversation about, Sharae. Oh, how do you know Sharae? And he's like, Sharae was a gift. Literally. Ha, ha, ha. And
Carter's so scandalized.
Yeah, she's like, and you accepted, and you could hear the incredulity. But you don't hear any more of the conversation because they're interrupted because they see some people wandering around in robes and staves. I guess they're not really wandering, they're walking through. They're not lost or something.
That's kind of a purposeful walk. There's a line of them.
They know where they're going.
Yes.
So they hide, but Daniel is not about that hiding life, so he goes to talk to them.
And speaks to them in English again, because of course.
And they...
Why would that be his default?
Again, and he's telling them, he's trying to communicate with them. He does tell O'Neill that they should probably avoid shooting them so as not to get a reputation for killing the people they meet on a planet. Or killing, I forget how he phrased it, but...
We do see here that the guys have the same gold marking on their foreheads, the same marking on their foreheads that Teal'c has, but instead of being gold, like Teal'c, theirs looks more like black, like normal tattooing.
They eventually manage to communicate somehow, either in English and or in the other language, that Daniel is looking for a village for them to take us to, and so they point out a town, and they set out for this town. And
we also learn in here that the name of that town is Chulak.
That's right.
So in Chulak, the architecture looks really similar to either Roman or Greek architecture, and we see inside the building that we're taken to, all the people are dressed in togas and have the same gold brands on their foreheads. SG-1 is brought in where this feast is happening, and they're put at the head of the table. And Daniel says that everyone must believe that they're gods.
They think we're gods. Okay, we're
for gods. Now what?
Again. It happens so often.
Again. always
Can't
mistaken for gods. And he doesn't even have an amulet this time.
Can't ever just leave the planet incognito and go your own happy way. No. Oh, it's all, let's feast and let's worship.
Let's feast and bow to us. A horn blows, and everybody bows down, not to SG-1 this time, but everybody bows down in general, and the SG-1 team also bows down because Daniel insists that they play it cool and do what everyone else is doing.
Right.
Some guards come in, the gold guy comes in, and so does Sharae, who is now all dressed up like a queen. Daniel leaps up and is told to kneel, but he doesn't, of course, and he's like, Sharae, it's me, don't you know me? Sharae doesn't recognize him, and we see that her eyes are glowing like the gold guy and like Roz did, but as Daniel runs towards her, she actually goes ahead and steps in front of the gold god, essentially protecting him with her body, which, of course, Daniel finds to be super disturbing and disconcerting, and because he's so taken aback by that, he's taken down by the guards. Back on Earth, they are nervously waiting for the team to return and talking about how little time is left. And then we go back to Chulak, and SG-1 is now in prison, not a water prison this time. We learn the gate's going to be sealed in about 90 minutes.
They're smarter about their water resources on this planet.
Yes, absolutely. But this isn't even a desert, so they probably don't need to be quite as careful, but they are. So that's good. Conservation is key.
Maybe that's why the other planet is a desert, because they weren't careful with their water.
It could be.
That's how deserts are formed.
Yes, absolutely. That's totally how deserts work. Teal'c comes up and is speaking English and wants to know where SG-1 got their technology and is looking at O'Neill's watch as he asks that.
Yes.
No, they try to say that they're from Earth, but Teal'c says that doesn't mean anything. So Daniel draws the symbol for Earth in the dirt, which Teal'c does seem to understand, but then wipes it out with his staff weapon.
Teal'c also mentions Goa'uld technology, which is a word we have not heard before. Yeah, he said this isn't...
Okay, I didn't hear that in my version, so maybe it was different in yours, because they mentioned Goa'uld later, but not here.
So Teal'c mentions that word, and we're like, oh, Goa'uld. What? Oh, who's that?
Or maybe I just was so used to the word that it didn't register.
And then we get a brief look at SG-2, who's endured a cold, windy night, and they're worried about SG-1, and Kowalski remains committed to the fact that they are not abandoning SG-1.
Yeah, O'Neill had specifically given him a direct order that they were to head back for the deadline no matter what, even if SG-1 wasn't back, but Kowalski says that's not going to happen. Yeah. He's not going to leave O'Neill behind. He's very dedicated. That's admirable.
So they're back in the prison, kind of looking around to see if they can find an escape. They talk about how this is not Ra. Daniel explains this is actually the symbol, the marking is for Apophis. Apophis.
We finally have a name for the gold guy instead of just Goldie or Gold Guy.
You just call him Gold Snake Man forever. I don't know.
I like Gold Snake Man better.
Daniel explains that Apophis is a serpent god who ruled the night while Ra ruled the day, and that comes from the Egyptian Book of the Dead. And then Skara is talking to O'Neill as well during this, or Skara talks to O'Neill and is like, we're gonna save Sharae, and O'Neill's like, well, maybe not. And Skara's like, what? And O'Neill can't say no to Skara, so he's like, we'll try. Apophis's guards come back, and they announce that the Goa'uld, I don't know, whatever, they're going to choose the children of the gods from among the prisoners. So they bring in an elaborate box, which is carrying Apophis and Sharae.
A large box, not a small box.
It's a big elaborate box. They fit in it.
It's a litter, I think, that they're actually called, which I never knew until
What
Game
is
of
it called?
Thrones. I think they're called a litter.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I have a lot of litter in my house.
Yeah.
Both of a cat waste variety and my own trash, so I'm swimming in it over here. So Apophis and Sharae arrive in their litter. Daniel needs to be held back, and that's part of it, but more of Apophis's people come in, and they start moving through the crowds, inspecting people.
I just need to mention here how I continue to not like the costume design that's happening in this episode, because their hats are so dumb and huge. I found it just was so distracting to me. Like, Apophis's hat looks like giant mouse ears.
It's me, Mickey Mouse.
But instead of facing forward, they're facing sideways. But like it just had these like big concave circles on either side. And Sharae is wearing like the Sydney Opera House on her head. But made out of purple metal, or I don't remember what color, but like some colored metal. It just seemed so ridiculous to me. They looked so stupid. You can continue.
So these people in their ridiculous hats wander through the crowd looking for their children. Daniel at some point, keeps trying things because she wants Sharae back, and he desperately is like, something of the host must survive, but not in that sad way. I just said it. But, like, it was sad.
It was sad. And Teal'c shakes his head no, which is sad.
But then while that's happening, they decide Skara is going to be one of their kids.
Oh, no.
So they take Skara away, and Apophis has no use for the rest of them, so he orders his guards to kill everyone else. And they leave. All of the serpent leader people, all of Apophis's ruler people, all of those people leave. The snake guards stay, and they're preparing to fire upon these innocent people trapped in here. And Teal'c looks at O'Neill. O'Neill looks at Teal'c. O'Neill's like, I can save these people. Help me.
To which, of course, Teal'c responds, Many have said that. And then he tosses a staff weapon to O'Neill, and they fire their weapons. And Teal'c says, but you're the first I believe could do it.
Yay! So they very quickly kill all of the other guards.
They take out everybody. Yeah, the two of them to take on like 20 people.
Extremely impressive. Well done, guys. Yeah.
Is it that they're that good, or were the other guards that
I don't
inept?
know. I wonder how hard it is to see through those helmets.
Probably pretty hard. And those helmets also had glowing eyes, so I wonder if like the eyes glowing inside the helmet gave like a weird lighting effect inside the helmet to make it hard for those poor guards to see.
It does seem like a silly way to have guards, but
like in space movies where the person's face is always lit up inside their helmet, and that would make it like impossible for them to see anything outside their helmet because it's just reflecting back their own face at them.
So that might be what happening. They just couldn't see their victims, so they just let themselves die. And then O'Neill blasts a hole in the back wall of the prison.
A stone wall too, so these weapons must be pretty potent if they can do that. This is the first time we've seen them doing something as forceful as that.
Yeah, and so all of the prisoners escape through there. The guard, Teal'c, so he's sitting there surveying what he's just done, and O'Neill's like, you can come with me, it's cool. And the guy is like, I have nowhere to go. And O'Neill's like, you can stay at my place. So then they introduce themselves. He's Teal'c. And then they're off, fleeing.
On their way back to the gate, Teal'c says that he's a Jaffa, and they are bred to serve so that the gods may live. He shows that he, too, has a nasty pouch, and I love everyone else's reaction here because they're all freaking out and screaming at the appearance of Teal'c's pouch, and we see that he has an infant Gua'uld. So this is the larval form of the god, so basically the same snake-like thing, but much smaller.
Yeah.
Everyone flips out and is grossed out, and they're like, put that away!
Actually, they're like, get rid of it!
Yeah, O'Neill's like, why do you carry that thing? But Teal'c says that all Jaffa carry them to maturity, and in exchange they get perfect health and long life, but without that larval Gua'uld, he would die. So it's kind of like a Trill thing, if anybody watches Star Trek, where the Trill can't leave without their symbiote. Same thing here with the Jaffa. Back at the gate, Skara and a bunch of people that were, a bunch of the higher-ups in this monarchy are beamed down from a ship in front of the gate. And then Sha're and Apophis also beam down with some guards around them. The ship goes after SG-1, Teal'c, and the prisoners and fires on them. Everybody scatters. Teal'c and O'Neill fire their staff weapons at the ship, and all kinds of chaos is happening at this point. At the gate, Apophis and Sha're are dialing to go to the next planet, wherever that ends up being. SG-2 comes out of nowhere and saves the day, taking down the ship that was attacking SG-1 and everybody else.
Yes!
Yay! Apophis and Sha're go through the gate, and then O'Neill gets back to the gate just as Skara is about to go through with his new family. And unfortunately, we see here, when Skara turns around, he has the glowy eye syndrome, and he also has his own sparkle bling and sends O'Neill flying before he then goes through the gate with his, I guess his new parents and their guards. O'Neill says that he didn't catch the symbols to see where they went, so they're kind of at a dead end here. Back on Earth, we learn that the deadline has come and is now just passed, but Hammond wants to wait another minute. We flash back to Chulak, where more enemies are approaching, and Daniel is sent to dial the gate while a firefight ensues. We flash back to Earth again. Hammond gives the order to lock out the device that is going to open the iris when the teams come back through. Flashback to Chulak, the gate is dialing and there's firefighting happening. And then back on Earth, we get an incoming wormhole warning, and Hammond says to belay that order to lock out the iris code. So they're going to let the iris open. Sam's code does successfully reopen the gate. Yay! Sam and the prisoners are able to run through the gate while O'Neill, Teal'c, and SG-2 hold off the enemy firefighters. Enemy firefighters. Enemy fighters. They're not firefighters. They're fighters. Daniel helps to get the refugees through the gate while they continue to fight off the bad guys that are coming. One of SG goes down, and an enemy is taken down by one of the fugitives. And that enemy has his own Goa'uld, who jumps out of the enemy's pouch. And, he jumps into Kowalski. And Kowalski is taken over by the Goa'uld. No! Teal'c comes through the gate, and everyone is just about to fire on him because, of course, they had weapons at the ready since they didn't know who was going to be coming through the gate when it was dialed in before. Thankfully, they're able to get everyone to hold their fire before they kill Teal'c. And then the rest of SG-2 and the rest of the prisoners make it through. The iris is closed, and the wormhole is disengaged. Everyone is safe.
Relief, kind of.
Yes.
There's lots of hugs and gratitude expressed. They start to work on their wounded.
Hammond is pissed that they have this enemy guy.
Yes.
Brought back through with them. So they do have to explain what just happened and how Teal'c helped everybody. Yep. And O'Neill says that Teal'c is going to be joining us on SG-1. Did they even ask Teal'c if that's what he wanted? That doesn't seem to be a conversation that we had, and Teal'c actually even seems a little surprised by that, as is everybody else.
There's not anything else going on anymore, so...
I guess not. So yeah, Teal'c is part of SG-1 now, moving forward.
Hammond just rolls over and lets people do whatever they want.
Oh, alright, whatever you say. We see Kowalski hanging out by the gate, so he did come through the Stargate, and he is kind of at the top of the ramp, looking a little sketchy. And everyone asks if he's alright, and he says he's fine. O'Neill and Daniel reflect on the fact that they need to find Sha're and Skara. And then we exit out of the episode with a close-up of Kowalski's face. And we see his eyes light up.
No! What's gonna happen?
Who knows?
Also, how do these people not have gaping wounds in their heads from these things jumping through? Do they,
A valid question, but Teal'c does mention, though, that they get long life and good health. So I'm thinking that possibly the Goa'uld, the little juvenile Goa'uld heal their new host, kind of right away.
Is there no blood flecking out or anything?
You would think. Yeah, you would think that there should have been some blood exploding out.
Wound, even if it was just dried blood on him.
That's a good point. There should have been a lot of blood, given how deep these things have to go.
But that's, That's just a
yeah. Because they've got to be buried in there pretty deep because, like, once they're in there, you can't, like, there's not a bulge in the person's back to show where it is. So it's got to be deep in there. There should have been a lot of blood. That's a good point.
That's okay. That's not a huge issue. Yeah.
So let's take a look at what's coming up next in, for me, episode 2, for Kathy, episode 3 of season 1 of SG1.
I think I might end up getting the DVDs because I hate watching it on Hulu. I can't, especially because I'm paying for the cheapy version of Hulu, so it's got so if I upgraded, I would probably have to pay full price for Hulu, and I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my fun note. I'm probably gonna end up buying the DVDs because I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't.
It's probably better if we have the same version anyway.
Fair. So the next episode is The Enemy Within. O'Neill and the SG-1 team must attempt to remove a Goa'uld larva that has infected Kowalski's brain, but time is running out! Exclamation point.
Oh my goodness.
What's gonna happen?
We might never know. Oh wait, we will, because we're gonna do another episode.
Goodness, I hope so.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, so speaking of that, our production schedule, we are gonna drop... we will have already dropped by the time that you heard this, both our pilot episode, which is the movie, and this episode, episode 1. And then we're going to be releasing episodes every other week, so bi-weekly basis. Yep. In the meantime, between episodes, if you're interested, you can email us at stargatezing@gmail.com, StarGatezing. You can also find us on Twitter at Stargatezing, again, Stargatezing. And we've gone ahead and, even though it's early, launched a Patreon. So patreon.com/stargatezing, same spelling. I am Mary, and this has been my co-host,
Hello.
Kathy.
Goodbye. Sorry, I interrupted. Go ahead.
That's fine. And you're listening to Stargatezing.
Yes. And I don't know. The end. If I'm emphasizing star, it comes out Stargatezing, and then if I'm like Stargatezing.
Stargatezing is weird because you don't say stargaze. Stargazing.
Stargazing.
I say stargazing.
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 So it'd be Stargatezing.
Stargatezing.
Okay.
Yeah.